Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidil mursaleen, amma ba'd, a'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajeem, bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
That was much better. To implement the sunnah, let's go to the third time, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Jazakumullah khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us all. Alhamdulillah, we're in the blessed month of Sha'ban. We thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for giving us this blessed opportunity to be in His house worshiping Him. And inshallah, after worshiping Him, you'll hear about implementing a fard kifaya, a religious obligation upon all of us that we are mandated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to implement, and a practice that the Prophet ﷺ and his companions implemented throughout their lives. My dear brothers and sisters, my name is Mahmud. I am the Deputy Executive Director of the Muslim Legal Fund of America. How many of you were here yesterday for the Jummah khutbah? Okay. Almost everyone, alhamdulillah. So Brother Ayman Ashad gave the khutbah yesterday, talking about the Muslim Legal Fund of America. Today, inshallah, I'm going to go a little bit more in depth, but not go in details that you're going to be bored. Right? I'm going to try to make it entertaining, inshallah. And after I talk about this work that we do, inshallah, you'll see how you can support us, inshallah. And then we're going to have Brother Mahmud talk about human rights, civil rights, and why, what he did in his career, and what he is doing today, inshallah ta'ala. So it is going to be a very concise and quick program, and you're going to enjoy it, inshallah. So pay attention, or else you're going to miss it. You got to live in the moment. So don't play with your phones, don't focus on anywhere else, focus on us, inshallah ta'ala. My dear brothers and sisters, as I mentioned, my name is Mahmud. I'm the Deputy Executive Director of this organization called the Muslim Legal Fund of America. What we do is we collect zakat and sadaqah. With those funds, we hire attorneys to defend the rights of Muslims who face legal challenges in American courtrooms. I want to make this clear. Many times people don't understand this. If someone runs a red light or punches someone in the face, if they call us, we don't help them. We don't want to help them. We help those individuals if they get stopped or harassed or put into difficulties because they have a beard or the way they wear their hijab. We want to help those sort of individuals. I'll tell you exactly who we're helping in a few moments, inshallah. We've been doing this work for the past 16 years. We were established in Dallas, Texas, right after the tragedies of 9/11. We saw that Muslims will be targeted, and in fact, Muslims have been targeted. In the past 16 years, we've been funding cases all across the country, from Dallas, Texas, to Michigan, to Chicago, to Florida, to New York, to California, Colorado, Arizona, everywhere, almost, in America, we funded a case. Because we saw that injustice was happening, and we saw that those brothers and sisters were simply targeted because they uttered La ilaha illallah, Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. My dear brothers and sisters, I want to give you an example of why and how we're doing this work. Imagine for a second that you were not in Denver today, but in Mecca, 1,500 years ago, and the Prophet ﷺ came to you tonight and said, how many of you would help the fund of Abu Bakr to free Bilal? Every single one of us would have jumped at the opportunity. Similarly, we have brothers and sisters who may not have a boulder on their chest, a physical boulder, but they have a legal boulder on their chest. They can't get help from anywhere else other than the Muslim community. SubhanAllah. And we've been doing this work. So we went out and hired some of the best attorneys in the country so that each and every single Muslim who faces these sort of injustices on civil, immigration, criminal on the federal level receives help. I want to give you one example of a case that we have funded in the past, amongst many. For those of you who are immigrants, for those of you who have come here leaving a different home, what tends to happen with the sunnah of the immigrant Muslim community is that they build a masjid or madrasa or orphanage back home, or at least they donate. Imam Hafiz Khan, a 77-year-old man originally from Pakistan, has been funding a masjid, madrasa and an orphanage for over 30 years. Whatever he collects, he sends back home. He's very diligent about it, mashallah. He calls and asks, how are my students doing? Are they okay? Do they need help? How can I help them more? What is it that I can provide to them? So, my dear brothers and sisters, I have a question for you. I know a lot of you speak Arabic, so it should be easy. How do you say one student in Arabic? Okay, I guess it's not easy. Talib, thank you. How do you say two students in Arabic? What is it? That word, Taliban, triggered his phone conversations to be recorded. As a result, an informant, an agent, came to the community, started to push and nudge and make and say things that the Imam never intended, never said, or never even wished to do. As a result, he and his 3 sons were arrested. SubhanAllah. The first son, alhamdulillah, they let him go. The second son, who, mashallah, is a very well-known scholar within the Desi community. He studied in Darul Uloom in Buffalo, New York. Many of the good scholars in that lineage, scholars know him really well. They told him, you can go, but we still have some questions for you. The third son, Irfan Khan, who is an IT specialist, was on assignment in California. The FBI came into his hotel room at 2 o'clock in the morning without any warning, knocked on the door, picked him up, and put him in a cell in Miami, Florida, and had him in a cell for 313 days in solitary confinement, 23 hours a day, 7 days a week. After that, the prosecution took the case to the judge. Right? And when they took the case to the judge, they wanted the judge to say, let's go to trial. Let's make sure that this person is found guilty and that's it. The judge looked at the evidence and said, you don't have enough evidence to hold this person in court, in jail. In fact, forget about going to trial. Let him go. So for those of you, if you did not follow this, understand this. Imagine you didn't go home. Imagine you're going home from here. But instead of trying to go home, someone arrests you, an agent arrests you, whether it be FBI and they say whoever. They pick you up and put you in jail for 13 days in a solitary confinement, 10 foot by 10 foot room, 23 hours a day, 7 days a week, 1 hour for fresh air. It could be at 2 o'clock in the morning. And then after 313 days, they tell you, you can go home. Will you still have a job? How will your family be provided for? What would happen to everything around you? Is this not injustice? Is this not the definition of injustice? Is this not the definition of oppression? My dear brothers and sisters, we partnered up with one of the largest law firms in Florida to sue the FBI for malicious prosecution. This sort of injustice cannot happen. And in fact, I've heard about a situation similar here in Colorado earlier today. My dear brothers and sisters, for the past 16 years, what we've done is we funded individual cases that we saw that required merit of this sort of support. We supported cases, or we funded cases where the community thought that it needed to be supported. We supported cases where we saw oppression or far-reachment or political agenda against the Muslims. But what we realized is that this sort of work is not going to stop. In fact, it's increasing. More and more of this xenophobia, Islamophobia, and aggression against Muslims is increasing. One of my teachers used to tell me when I was younger that if you want to see the Abu Jahls, Abu Lahabs of the world, you got to start developing the character of Umar and Usman and Ali radiallahu anhum, Abu Bakr radiallahu anhum. When you have that character, you'll see the oppression. So brothers and sisters are becoming more and more in tune with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We're building masjids and community centers, Islamic centers throughout America. It's increasing daily. Do you not think that the xenophobia, the Islamophobia is going to increase? Absolutely. So instead of just case funding individual cases, we realized that we needed to figure out how to institutionalize this. Because every single minority community in America, whether it be the African Americans, whether it be the, when America was created, African Americans were not even considered human beings. After that, women didn't have the right to inheritance. They didn't have the right to property. They didn't have the right to even vote until the 1920s. Every single minority community in America had to fight legally to get their rights. And they still are fighting. Similarly, my dear brothers and sisters, with the Muslims, we need to fight legally to make sure that our constitutional rights, which are oftentimes our God-given rights, are implemented, are given to us. Even though it is written, freedom of religion, freedom of expression, freedom of congregation, if you don't utilize it, if you don't demand it, if you don't practice it, it can be easily taken away. As a result, we established a non-profit, pro bono, charity-based law firm. It is the only national law firm in America for the Muslims that is pro bono, absolutely free. That any imam, any community member, any institution, Muslim institution, can reach out to them absolutely free for immigration, civil, or criminal issues on the federal level. Alhamdulillah, in the 2.5 years that has been open, we've dealt with over 600 cases. These are not just random cases. No, these are very sophisticated, difficult issues these brothers and sisters have dealt with. My dear brothers and sisters, there are more and more of these sort of cases that we're working on. Imam Hafiz Khan that I mentioned, he's still in jail. We're working on the habeas petition to get him out. If it was your brother, if it was your uncle, if it was your father, you would want someone to help in this sort of oppression. My dear brothers and sisters, this is the month of Sha'ban. The Prophet ﷺ used to give more sadaqah in this month than any other month except Ramadan. This is the month to prepare for the blessed month of Ramadan. So I want to ask for your support. Perhaps you've given yesterday. But I want to ask for your commitment because you didn't get the details that I mentioned today as it was mentioned in the khutbah yesterday. Alhamdulillah, I believe there's around 20-something adults here. So I wanted to see if every single adult here could make a commitment of at least sponsoring 4 hours. Now, what I mean by the 4 hours is, we are a law fund that funds a law firm. In America, there are 1.2 million attorneys. Each attorney, they can charge anywhere between $100 an hour to all the way to $1,200 an hour, and everything in between. If you do the math, it comes out to be $250 an hour, on average. So when we hire attorneys, it's based on legal hours. So I wanted to see if every single adult in here could sponsor at least 4 hours, which is basically $1,000. But what I'm saying is, don't give me that $1,000 today. Make that commitment. Be it $10 a month for the next 100 months, or be it $100 a month for the next 10 months. However way you want to do it, you support this initiative. If you can do more, please do more. But I don't want anyone to go away and say, you know what, I don't want to sponsor 4 hours. I want every single person in here to be able to do that commitment, inshallah. To start off with this initiative, is there one Kareem, or even Kareema in the back, inshallah, that says, inshallah, you know what, I will be the first Kareem to say I will sponsor 4 hours. Inshallah. Can I have the first Kareem, inshallah? It's $1,000, $100 a month for the next 10 months. Inshallah, it's easy. You make the commitment, Allah will make it easy for you. Zakat eligible, sadaqah eligible, 501c3, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you can match it with your employer if you would like. Can I have the first Kareem, inshallah? Is there anyone that can takbir?
Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar.
Brothers and sisters, takbir doesn't cost money. Right? Takbir.
Allahu Akbar.
Allah shall accept him, say Ameen.
Ameen.
Allah accept his family, say Ameen.
Ameen.
Allah bless him, say Ameen. MashaAllah, we got one brother. Can I have his second brother, inshallah? That's big. May Allah accept him, say Ameen. May Allah bless him, say Ameen. And his family, Ameen. And his intentions, say Ameen. Alhamdulillah. Can I have the third Kareem or Kareema, inshallah? It's again $10 a month for the next 100 months, $20 a month for the next 50 months. However way you want to do it. It is easy. You make the commitment, you put it on a credit card, you forget about it. You put it on a debit card, you forget about it. Allah, the Prophet ﷺ said that when you give in sadaqah, it never depletes from your wealth. In fact, it increases. Every single person that I've spoken to that give in the path of Allah, they have affirmed this. In fact, Tony Robinson, one of the greatest gurus in the world when it comes to life coaching and this sort of work, he wrote a book after 20 years. And in this 30 chapters of his book, at the end of the chapter, at the end of the book, it's simple. The book is about how to become rich. But at the end of that 30 chapters, it's you give sadaqah. That's what the Prophet ﷺ said 1500 years ago. So who will be the third Kareem or Kareema, inshallah? To say, you know what, I will give in the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that my brothers and sisters can be alleviated from these difficulties. And inshallah, Allah will remove any affliction, any conflict, any issues, any debt that you may have. Allah is al-Razzaq. Allah is the one that provides. So give to the giver. So who will be the third Kareem, inshallah? Or Kareema? To say, inshallah, I'll give $100 a month. Or if you want to do $200 a month for the next 5 months and it's done. Anyone else, inshallah? Any other brothers that want to match these two brothers? There's many hadith that I can mention. But I just wanted to see if I can get some quick hands. I need 2 more people, inshallah. 2 more Kareem or Kareema, inshallah. That can say, I will give $100 a month for the next 10 months. Anyone else? Inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you, brothers and sisters. Alhamdulillah. So I want to go down a little bit. Let's go for 2 hours, which is $500. Can I get 4 hands? Takbir. Alhamdulillah, takbir. May Allah reward these brothers, say Ameen. May Allah bless these brothers, say Ameen. May Allah accept these brothers, say Ameen. Alhamdulillah. Yes? Can I get 2 more hands, inshallah? For $500. $50 a month for the next 10 months. It is done. Again, you write it down, you forget about it. You have no idea how this works. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is an alim al-ghaib. He's the knower of the unseen. Allah rewards you, Allah increases your wealth, you have no idea. Allah will give some rewards for you when you're raised on the day of judgment, as well as here. You may have had a good deed that you didn't know about. Allah will make it happen for you. So who will be the third Kareem, inshallah ta'ala? For 2 hours. Takbir. Let us accept his brother, say Ameen. Let us accept his intention, say Ameen. Let us accept his family, say Ameen. Alhamdulillah. One other Kareem, or Kareema, inshallah, that says, I'll give $50 a month for the next 10 months, or $500 in one shot. The blessed month of Ramadan is coming up. You can make the intention now and give it in Ramadan. By the way, there's friends here, if you can give them money. So can I have one other Kareem or Kareema? $50 a month, inshallah. Anyone else? One other Kareem, inshallah. $50 a month, inshallah. One other brother or sister, inshallah. $50 a month, and Allah will make it easy for you. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Then, I wanted to see if I can get 5 people for $300, which is $25 a month for 12 months. Can I get 5 people? That's 1 legal hour. 1 legal hour of sponsoring one attorney. My dear brothers and sisters, the attorneys that we're funding are some of the best attorneys in the country. In fact, we went and hired Mr. Charles Swift, who was a lieutenant commander in the Navy. He became famous because of a case called Salam Hamdan versus Donald Rumsfeld. Do you guys remember George W. Bush? Well, with the current president, you could. So, his Secretary of Defense was Donald Rumsfeld. At that time, in 2002, the US government captured an individual by the name of Salam Hamdan in Afghanistan. He is a Yemeni national that was caught in Afghanistan. And when they captured him, he was arrested because he was the driver of Osama bin Laden. And they put him in Guantanamo Bay. But the government wanted to prove an example of him and say, look, we caught a terrorist. So the government appointed an attorney to defend him. Lieutenant Commander Charles Swift was a JAG, a Judge Advocates Corps, or a military attorney. So he represented him because that was his job. He questioned Mr. Salam and said, do you support Al-Qaeda? No. Why were you in Afghanistan? Well, I had to provide for my family. I was driving a taxi. So for those of us who drives a taxi, this is pertinent to us. So Osama bin Laden was in his cab, but he was captured. He didn't support Al-Qaeda. He didn't support terrorism. So Salam Hamdan convinced Charles Swift that he was not a terrorist. So he was so convinced, he was so determined, that he put together one of the best legal teams in the history of America. It is so impressive that first-year law students actually studied this case about Hamdan v. Rumsfeld. And Mr. Charles Swift took this case so seriously that he defended Salam Hamdan, and it went all the way to the Supreme Court. In 2008, if you turned on the Colbert Report, if you turned on NBC's Meet the Press, if you turned on Fox News, you would have seen Charles Swift in all those news shows, talking about this case, and why he's defending a person from Guantanamo Bay. And eventually, Charles Swift beat Donald Rumsfeld, beat George W. Bush, and today Salam is in Yemen, absolutely free. Because he took the case so seriously. After he retired from the Navy, the White House at that time, not the current White House, but at that time, started asking him for advice, seeking his advice. In some people's list of Supreme Court nominees, Charles Swift was on it. He's been ranked one of the top 100 legal minds in America. So, once he retired, we started to use him for various different cases that we've been funding, such as the Dr. Afia Siddiqui's case, Dr. Samuel Alian's case, and many, many other cases that we funded in the past. And he said, you know what, what's happening to the Muslims that I'm seeing is the current civil rights front. It is what's happened to the African Americans, this happened with the Latinos, this is what happened with the Germans, and we are the it right now. You guys need to do more. And that's when we established the law firm. That's when we asked him to join us. And he is leading this initiative. Under him, we have the #1 immigration attorney in America, where judges and lawyers use his book to determine what the immigration law is. His name is Ira Kurzban. For the kids, if you don't know who that is, he is the attorney for, what's his name? Justin Bieber, right? He is that impressive. Right? Then we went and hired one of the top criminal attorneys in America. She was the attorney that freed Dr. Samuel Alian. If you don't know who Dr. Samuel Alian is, he was a person that was tried, first person that was tried with the Patriot Act. The government spent, I believe, $53 million behind him to convict him. Not one verdict came back. That said guilty. Alhamdulillah. Takbir. He was free. He is free. Right? It was injustice. It was oppression. And Linda Marino was his attorney that was able to do that. She has over 200 jury verdict trials that most attorneys don't even have 20. Right? She is extremely impressive. And under them, we have junior attorneys. Under them, we have interns. We're developing a team of 20 attorneys and paralegals and researchers so that any Muslim throughout the country can pick up the phone and get help. This is impressive, my dear brothers and sisters. This is protecting our Izzah, the dignity of Islam. Not only that, Since 2011 till today, over 300 institutions in America have lost their 501c3 status. What does that mean? That means that they don't want you to give zakat, they don't want you to give sadaqah to these institutions. Many times it's the institution's fault, but often enough it is the way the policy and the way the rules and regulations are created so that the institutions lose their 501c3s. So we have established a non-profit business lawyer who is one of the top attorneys in America as well. Her name is Sherry Crittenden. She was the attorney for the United Negro College Fund, which was, she was managing $1.3 billion grant fund that 900 schools used throughout America. She was the she was the general attorney for that fund. And we have hired her so that masjids and institutions and schools can use her and her experience to make sure that they are in compliance and making sure that everything that's done within the institution is on par, so that the institutions are protected. My dear brothers and sisters, alhamdulillah, our community is growing. Alhamdulillah, our institutions are growing. But we need to protect ourselves. And the way you do that is through legal means, through lawful means. So please, I need 5 hands for $25 a month so that, inshallah ta'ala, this effort can continue to happen. Because if you don't do your part, how are we going to move forward? We don't get grant funding. We don't get government funding. It comes, this work that we're doing, the 18,000 donors that we have throughout America, are all Muslims giving towards this initiative. So I need 5 hands, $25 a month. Quickly, inshallah ta'ala, and then you have Brother Mahmud speaking, inshallah. I need 5 hands, inshallah. $25 a month. Can I get them, inshallah? Say Bismillah and it'll happen. Can I get those 5 hands, inshallah? $25 a month. Easily, inshallah. Is there anyone that can do that for me, inshallah? I don't want to just sit down without getting a few hands. Is there any other brother, inshallah? Brothers against the wall. Can I have someone that says, inshallah, I'll give $25 a month? For a year, inshallah. Brothers against this wall. Is there any brothers in the middle? Is there anyone else, inshallah? $25 a month. It is not that difficult. I know money is tight. All of us have our difficulties. But if you make the intention, Allah will make it happen. There are many brothers that wrote down the number, they don't have a job, but they made the intention, Allah will make it happen. Can I have just 5 hands? $25 a month. Is there anyone, inshallah? Right. Where? Takbir. Those that accept him, say Ameen. Ameen. See, the brother just waited for me to ask. May Allah SWT reward you, say Ameen. Alhamdulillah. Can I have a second Kareem, inshallah? 4 more hands, inshallah. 4 more. 4 more hands, inshallah. $25 a month. Allah will make it happen for you. You don't have to think about it. If you're a college student, you can do it. Even if you have a family, you can do it, even though it may sound very difficult. But Allah will make it happen, inshallah. My dear brothers and sisters, one last hadith before I end. We know of a famous hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. He mentioned a narration from the Israelites. He mentions that a woman who had a very bad profession was crossing through the journey. Was on a journey through the desert. And while she was traveling, she became extremely thirsty. So she reached a well and she quenched her thirst, alhamdulillah. Then she noticed that there was a dog licking mud. And she found it in her heart. She had compassion in her heart to be concerned about this dog. So she took her shoe, got the water from the well, and fed the dog. And in return, Allah gave her Jannah. And she was a prostitute by profession. Allah forgave her sins. This is according to the Prophet ﷺ in this hadith. My dear brothers and sisters, when we think about our fellow Muslims, when we think about our protecting our institutions, when we think about making sure that our identity is secure, don't you think Allah will give us even more? Allah will grant us Jannah, inshallah. So brothers, I need 4 hands. That's it. $25 a month. Is there anyone else that can do this? May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you, brothers. May Allah accept you, brothers. And one last thing, please give whatever it may be it $100, $50, $25 towards this effort. Because without your support, without your dua, we can't continue. But know this, if you don't support it with that intention, I'm not going to support it, Allah will make it happen. Why? Because this work is in the path of Allah. This work is to make sure that the izzah, the dignity of Muslims are protected, and that the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala continues to happen. Jazakumullah khairan. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept you, brothers and sisters. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our intentions. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allow us to reach month of Ramadan, which is very close to us. So keep us in your dua, inshallah, and remember us in your zakat and sadaqah. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah. At this time, I want to introduce to you a NBA great, Brother Mahmud Abdulrauf. Beyond that, for the young guys, I just want to let you know he beat Jordan. There's no other explanation needed beyond that. So, Brother Mahmud Abdulrauf. Takbir.
Allahu Akbar.
Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah. I want to thank Allah first for being here, as is customary for me. And also, I just want to say I was happy to be back home. I see a lot of...
Welcome home.
Alhamdulillah. I see a lot of familiar faces. And I see some, I talked to one earlier that was elementary school. So, I'm good. So I guess it speaks of my age. They were very young when I was here. Maybe I think this has been 16 years since I've been back in this area, and a lot has changed. So it's definitely nice to be back. Let me just begin by, he was talking about civil rights and immigrant rights and all of those things. And I don't know, I know some of you, because for me, this is where a lot of my career started here in the NBA. But also, the beginning of the end also started in Denver as well. Because, I tell the story a lot about my life, and it just dawned on me today when I was driving, or this evening when I was driving up, and I didn't notice it earlier when I was out playing with the children. Because oftentimes I talk about before I became a Muslim, of course, and it started when I was very young. Of course, I can cherry pick when I got the autobiography of Malcolm. That was a more visible time for me that, okay, this is when it began to blossom. But really, Allah was planting seeds early on in my life. When I look back, and even growing up in Mississippi and seeing this Muslim family, and as a child, seeing the sister in hijab, and how they would carry themselves, and I would be transfixed, and watching them, not knowing anything about who they were, what their culture was, what they believed in. And then just growing up and seeing the movie Roots, and the images that I saw of Punta Kinte making salah, the drums beating, going out, Salaam Alaikum. They didn't resonate with it, And even in the 70s, looking at images on television, of the Islamic Revolution, not knowing what it was about. But these were seeds that Allah was planting. And so going to LSU, Allah blessed me to meet a coach who handed me the autobiography of Malcolm. And that's what really, it took off, because reading his life and how he articulated issues, as well as his courage in doing so. It seemed that to Malcolm the truth meant more than anything else. And so going through that process, because at that young age I was searching, I was battling. I was searching for an identity. I had a lot of questions about Christianity, the relationship that God has with us and that we have with God, the nature of Jesus, all of those things. And I saw a lot of things when I was young, growing up in the South, growing up in the ghettos, seeing my mother struggle, the way I looked at myself and viewed myself, looked at myself as inadequate, I looked at myself as being inferior, all of those things, just never having really a lot of confidence academically. And, you see things when you're young, but you can't really put your finger on it. And you know that these things aren't right. You want to say something about them, but you lack a little courage, in doing so. But I always do as a young man, even at that age, that, I think it's innate in us. Allah put it in us. We're attracted to pleasant things, and we're repulsed by unpleasant things. We might not be able to put our finger on it, but it's just innate in us to know that this is not right, and this is right for most things. And so this was me as a child, and I was that little child even at 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. I would find myself, after working out throughout the day and all of those things, don't know why, but I would find myself turning on the television. And I would always find myself watching the images, how they show, I forget, these commercials that talk, showing children throughout the world who were starving, right? Protruding bellies, sunken in eyes, eating stuff that don't even look like food, insects flying all around. And as a young man, those things would bring me to tears, and I would always ask Allah, please put me in a position to be of service someday, to help these people someday. And this is one of the motivators for me in training so hard. One of them, in training, just being in a position to help someone someday. So what I'm getting at is that going through all of that, I was able to, Coach Brown gave me the autobiography of Malcolm. And for me, that book sparked a desire to want to know more. And I was saying to myself, if this belief system can change him, I wonder what it can do for me. And so this city for me, again, it was the beginning of my NBA career. And this place right here was the first place. I remember sitting in my home in Cherry Hills at the time, and there was a young man named Mark James. We became close because there was this pastor that I was communicating with. I was still searching, knowing that I didn't really believe in Christianity. That's all I'd been taught, but I knew I wanted something else. There was something else out there. And we were sitting at my table about this distance, and Islam came up in conversation. And he said to me, I said to him, I said, you interested in Islam? He said, yes. He said, you? I said, of course. He said, I met this brother at the airport named Abdullah. He said, we can go to the masjid. And I would always say the masjid on Evans Street. Right? I didn't know, after driving so much, I don't always look at streets. I just know where I'm going. I have a good sense of direction. I didn't realize it's on Birch. So I would always say the masjid on Evans Street. So this place has been built up since then so much that when we came here today, I'm playing. And I went back to the room, and I'm on the phone with a brother Shaheed. I said, man, this place has changed a lot. I was somewhere today, and I think it's a new masjid. I've never seen it before. But when we came another direction this evening, we're driving. I'm like, hold on. Got a little closer. This is the same masjid that I've been talking about in my story. So I remember rushing in the car to come here, and there was a brother, I don't know if he's still living, he's still here. He would tend to the gardens or whatever at the time, outside. And we came up, and I said, brother, we were told that we could come and pick up a Quran. He said, sure. He brought me to this basement. And we came in and gave him the Quran. He said some nice words. I was half listening because my mind was on, I'd never even seen a Quran. Mama, I want to know what's in this book. I'm thirsty. So we took it, we went back to the house, literally, like yesterday. I can remember, I sat down, he sat down with his, I opened it up, turned 2 or 3 pages. I looked across the table, I said, man, I don't know about you, but I'm going to be a Muslim. That's it for me. I found what it is I'm looking for. He said, I'm going to be a Muslim too. And so from there, we began to go to the masjid, began to talk to a brother. He began to relate to me, to relate to us just the tenets of Islam, the ideology of Islam. And that summer, after my first year in the league, I embraced Islam. Now that's when it hit the thing. Because growing up, I'd always been this little boy that I would see things. I know there's a problem, but it was hard for me to articulate it. And I was also a little apprehensive. I didn't have the courage to do it. Because you grow up and you see the way your parents interact with people. your uncles and your aunts, especially when it's a relationship between white and black in the South. There's this sort of slave-like submissiveness in communication, and you find yourself as a child developing some of those same traits. And I noticed that when I saw something, I wanted to say something about it, I would get nervous. And I'm like, why am I feeling this way? I don't like the way this feels. It doesn't feel natural. I don't like it. I got to get rid of it. I got to break these chains, that's holding me back. And I had to recognize it because I would have problems when I go to sleep. People would see this athlete out there playing on that court in front of thousands or millions, and they see confidence. You're shaking hands and all of that good stuff, right? But deep down, I was insecure. I lacked courage. And I didn't like the way that made me feel. The way that made me feel. And I was constantly soul-searching. I was constantly trying to find ways. So I had to start taking small steps. So, I'm going to lose my train of thought every now and again. This mental amnesia. What was the last thing I just said? Will you listen?
You were brought here, you picked up the Quran, went home and read it across.
Alhamdulillah. I'll go back to that. I'll catch up. When I began to read, when I came and I embraced Islam, when I began to read the Quran for me, there's something about information. When you begin to read information, you begin to share it. When you begin to share it, you begin to notice that there's a lot of people that think like you. They share the same ideas that you share. And what that does, it gives you confidence. That confidence, eventually, if you're fortunate, it turns into courage. Like I gotta, as Allah said, don't be like a donkey with books on his back. You got all this knowledge, what you gonna do? And so I'm wrestling with these thoughts. And I know I don't want to be this person. I don't want to be on my deathbed someday. And one of my worst fears is to be on my deathbed and have regrets. That, you know what, I'm dying. And I've lived somebody else's life. I didn't live the life that I wanted to live, or that I thought I should live. I saw things that I didn't think was right. I didn't say anything about them. I didn't do anything about them. And that literally pricked my conscience. And so, reading the Quran, studying, and this is the first book that I ever finished in my life. Being in school, the Hajj was the first overseas trip that I ever took, when I became a Muslim. But when I began to read, this is what it did to me. It began to give me this confidence, to give me this courage. And I knew that I couldn't sit on it. It's kind of like what Erin Roy says. She says, once you see something, you can't unsee it. To be silent, to say nothing, is just as political an act as speaking out. Either way, you're accountable. So I'm saying, well, you know what? If silence ain't gonna help, being quiet about it, I'm just as guilty as speaking out about it. It's just as political. I might as well go for broke. This was my attitude. Do I know everything? No. Do I have to have all the answers? No. If I'm, and I'm thinking, well, if I'm waiting for all the answers before I move, that almost assures you that you're not gonna do anything, because you're never gonna know everything. As Allah says, as Islam teaches us, whatever you know, you act upon it, and Allah will show you the rest. And so that's what I began to do. And so I made a decision, right? Not to stay. So this was the beginning of my, again, coming here, this started my NBA career. And I said earlier that it also was the beginning of my end. Because this is where I was introduced, invited by Allah to a faith that for me trumps everything that I've ever been a part of. The fame, the publicity, the fortune. This for me is everything. And I don't mince my words. I'm not just saying this because it sounds good. And I tell people all the time, I say, look, and now, at 48, before 48, because I don't want, one of my greatest fears, that's what I was saying. One of my greatest fears is being on my deathbed and having regrets. That, man, I could have did this and I could have, what's his name? George Washington Carver, and I keep this in my kitchen. He says, no one has the right to come into this world and go out of it without leaving behind distinct and legitimate reasons for having passed through. We don't have the luxury, right, with what Allah has given us. You know, I said, which of the favors of the Lord will you deny? I've given you everything in the samawat and the ard for you to succor, for you to utilize. It's all for you. So we don't have the luxury, right, to waste what He has given us. So I'm processing, because this is what we're supposed to do as Muslims, right? Process all this information. Right? Knowledge is the lost property of the believer of the wise, and wherever you find it, keep it and apply it. And so I'm processing this stuff. Like Horace Mann said, you should be ashamed to die until you have won a victory for humanity. This is Islam. Stand up against justice, even if it's against yourself. Right? So I'm processing this stuff. And so I knew at that time, okay, I have to make a decision. I don't know necessarily what, but I got to do something. And for me, I began to read profusely. You know, because this is what Islam tells us too, to read. And when you're reading, the beauty about reading is that you come across information. You're reading in this book, and you like the author. He mentions an author. So if I like him, I might like him. So you start, before you know it, you just got a whole bunch of books, and you're reading. So I'm coming across information I've never heard before in my life. And I'm starting to get angry. Right? Because I'm looking at how I've been misinformed and miseducated throughout the public school system. Also, some of that was my upbringing. My mother had an 8th grade education. So there's only so much she can give us. It's hard for somebody to give you something that you don't have. And I'm reading stuff even about in Timbuktu. I don't know if you've ever heard of the story, Prince Among Slaves, about Abdulrahman and Natchez. I'm in Mississippi, 3 hours up the street. This is where this happened. And so I'm in Denver. I missed all this. I can't get that back. All the stuff that I missed. Like my high school coach told me, 1 second lost can never be regained again. You can never go back and say, I'll make up for that second that was lost. That second is gone. All you can do is pick up from now. So I'm thinking about all of this stuff that I lost. Right? That I had the opportunity to know. Somebody could have taught me something. And I'm just telling you my thought process. So I come across this information about Abdulrahman and Natchez and being enslaved, and then it shifts to what was going on because he was from Timbuktu, and the civilization of Timbuktu, the universities, the judicial systems. When we were taught about ourselves, that we, just like the Constitution at the time, we're what, 3/5 human being, all right, or that we don't have a civilization. And so we're working off of this mindset. And I think one of the most genocidal things, and I use that word meticulously, I think one of the most genocidal things is not necessarily killing someone. It's miseducating them. It's destroying a history of who they are as individuals. As Allah says in the Quran, oppression is worse than slaughter. When you oppress someone, if you kill me, there's nothing else you can do to me. But when you oppress me, that has generational effects. Your children see it. Your children's children see it. Like the way I would see my mother and people interacting with white folks, right? Very submissive. And I saw myself doing the same thing. Why can't I tell this person what I feel? Right? Why can't I just communicate what I believe without feeling that, you know, somebody's going to hate me or I'm in the wrong? I didn't like that. And so I began to take steps. And without going through all of those steps, it led to my decision, because reading all of what was happening globally in the world, reading what was happening domestically, Noam Chomsky, Grover Dale, Randall Robinson, you know, just a list of authors, Aaron Laddie Roy, man, I just can't see. Knowing even what we give our allegiance to Allah, and only Allah. I said, I just can't see myself standing for that. It hit the fan. Right? And of course, instead of dealing with the issues, they focus on the flag. They focus on assassinating character, right? Tyranny and oppression. They cherry pick words. And for me, and I say this, Islam is what, because we're talking about here, you know, we know what the Prophet Islam says about whoever begins their day and they're not concerned with the affairs of the Muslims, they're not of his own. Sometimes I like to reword it, astaghfirullah if I'm wrong, because I don't think that justice is Muslim specific, right? Because Allah says you take one life unjustly as though you killed all of humanity. You know, as Muslims, we don't just worry about what's happening with Muslims, but yet charity starts at home. There's a protocol to giving. In the Quran, when Allah talks about giving, He says, give to your family, then give to your near of kin. Then there's a list, I don't know the order, the wayfarer, the orphan, the neighbor, right? The person you're trying to win over, there's a protocol. So we have to start with us, this family. And so, for me, you know, I'm reading this Quran and I'm looking at these things and I'm listening to the Prophet, you know, his message, you know, what he says about whoever begins their day, they're not concerned with the affairs of the Muslims. And these are the things I'm thinking about. You know, a lot of people don't even know when I was playing basketball. And we always have to, like now, you know, we're here. And I know, and I'm not one of those, I'm not good at fundraising. You know, I'm just telling you right now. That's what people like this do. But I'll say that when, you know, I'm always trying to stay connected. Martin Luther King has a saying, and I know we all know it, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Right? And sometimes I think with us, even with Muslims sometimes, we start just looking at ourselves and our problems. And it's a must, we have to. But when we do that, it's hard for other people, when things happen to us, to want to come and help. So all y'all do is take care of yourself. Sometimes. So I'm looking at, I'm listening and I'm looking at all of this. And even when I was playing basketball, a lot of people don't know, I used to, before games, how many of you heard of the Battle of Algiers? The movie, Lion of the Desert, The Message, right? Well, that was back then when they had VHS. Yeah, a lot of y'all young people don't know about VHS. And the portable is about this big. I used to take it on the road and take my big VHS and put it in. But I used to literally look at those things before I played games. And I would watch those movies. And then what was happening in Bosnia at the time, I had footage where they were showing missiles. They were showing the actual war on TV. And they were showing missiles, you know, the infrastructure of cities being bombed. And they were showing men's private parts being placed in trays and babies' heads being blown. And literally, people didn't know it. But I'm sitting there every day before games and in my house, I'm sitting and I'm looking at these because just like when I was young, we always have motivators to push us, right? Some days, I want to be great because I'm thinking about getting my mother out the ghetto. I'm thinking about an opponent I don't know I'm going to face one day. I'm thinking about whatever, being in a position to help people. And so this is getting me up in the morning to go train and try to be the best I can be. Well, the same thing, now that I'm a Muslim, I'm like, man, I don't know which road, I don't know what I can do. I'm trying to find a way to help, right? I know I have the money, I'm in a position, but at the same time, I'm kind of directionless too, don't know which way to go. That's why I'm thankful with organizations like this, because you have people that put in the work. For people like me that haven't figured it out, and if you trust them or not, whoever they are, whatever organization, they've done the work. It's easy to do until you can find out what you want to do. But for me, this is what I would do to stay motivated, to stay connected, to stay in tune, whether it was listening to what was happening in Kashmir, listening to what was happening in Palestine, what's happening in Somalia or Africa or Kenya, whatever. I'm always trying to stay connected. And I would watch these images. And these images, the night before John Stockton, when I hit 51, I just sitting in that hotel in Utah, and I'm watching it, and I'm looking at these images of these Bosnian Muslims being slaughtered. And he didn't know it. But when I walk on the court, shake hands. Good game, man. Good game. I'm smiling, but in my heart, I'm looking at you like you just raped my mama. I'm looking at you like you were the cause. You just created the policy to destroy Muslims. So now when I'm playing you, I'm not looking like this, but my heart is approaching you like that. And for me, that made me feel good. If I have to destroy you, and in my mind, destroying you, I win. We win. And so these are little games I would play with myself. So these games eventually led to what? You know, I got to do something. So I stopped, said, I can't stand. And then Allah, without me even having all the answers, Allah thrusted me out there. It's like when you take a step, Allah takes more towards you. Right? So Allah thrusted me out there to do something. It's just like He said earlier, just say Bismillah. Even if you don't know, Allah will make a way. And this is what happened. And so they kept coming. The media was asking questions and it forced me to do more research. It forced me to talk to brothers. It forced me to say, look, man, this is what I believe. I got whatever the consequences, I gotta hold up to it. And to this day, I have no regrets whatsoever concerning that decision. I'm not apologetic about that decision. That's the best decision that I've made in my life. You know, Allah's al-Razaq. He's the best to provide, the best to guide, all of those beautiful things. But these are the things for me, Mahmud Abdulrauf, that every single day when I wake up, I'm constantly trying to inform myself, I'm trying to elevate my thinking, trying to not be that person who got this knowledge. There's a saying by the Sorrow tribe, knowledge is only a rumor until it's lived in the muscles. Right? Until you experience it, until you go through that experience, it'll only be a theory, it'll be unproven. If you want to see it proven, if you want to test what Allah says, He'll tell you. Go ahead. See for yourself. Go see for yourself if it works. And so this is what I had to do. I had to test the information. You know, Allah, you say, if this is who you are, you say this is what we should do. And to this day, this is what Mahmud Abdulrauf does to try to stay connected. And because without that, it's hard for us to develop unity. It's hard for us to develop brotherhood if we're only looking at our own situation and we're not looking at ourselves as equals. So when I wake up and I'm grabbing publications from Washington Report on Middle Eastern Affairs, grabbing the Crescent International, Islamic Movement magazine, grabbing the Socialist magazine, because there's information everywhere. I want to know what's happening. And I'm literally trying to sit there and feel and connect with what's going on so I can develop the strength to do something about it. And once the ball started rolling, I couldn't stop. It's like now 9/11 hits. This Negro won't shut up. you know, and they come and I speak my conscience. Because for me, the most important thing is, and I said this a while back, I said I want to live and die with a free conscience and a free soul, whether anybody likes it or not. And this is the mission I'm on. And this is why for me, an organization like this, other organizations, we're doing a lot of great work in all parts of the world. I think it's imperative that we support. I don't care. If some of us, we don't like to give openly. We like to give underneath. That's cool. Some of us can't give because of our means. That's cool. Give in dua. Pray every single night. Share information with others. You don't know who you may share information with, that they may have the means and be able to do something. But don't sit on it. Don't sit on this information. You know, especially nowadays. You know, especially with who we got into the office, the White House. You know, I was reading something the other day and they said that he's so concerned with the size of his hands. They say, but the citizens are so concerned with the size of his brain. You know, and that's real with all the stuff that's happening right now. So I just want to say, and I know I'm emotional right now, and I'm on a tangent, but I love Islam. I love Allah, I love this deen, I love this ummah. And I know we're not perfect. You know, and I know we have a lot of issues among ourselves, but at the same time we have a lot of great things that we do. And I know we have love for each other. You know, we connect every day, shoulder to shoulder, toes to toes, and heart to heart in our salah. You know, and sometimes when we leave, there's a disconnect. But for many of us too, there is a connect. And I know that there's a love. And I just, my prayer is that we continue to grow closer to each other and increase into that bond that Allah wants us to increase in. And just to continue to build upon this message of Islam, this message that Allah is giving us, and become stronger as a result of it. And pretty much they keep handing me this paper, because I can kind of sometimes keep running my mouth, but at any rate, I love all of y'all, and that's what I'm asking. And keep the ummah in the du'as. Keep them in your du'as.
I know you from day one. You probably don't remember.
I do remember you.
You remember me?
Yes, I do.
The Mercedes and the couscous and all those days? All right.
Yes.
All right, one quick man, 1 minute. One advice to these youngsters to hold on to Islam with all this influence, briefly, in 1 minute, please. We want it from you. These young, energetic Muslims are lost. New generation, it's not like you and me who grew up, brother. Give them an advice for 1 minute, please.
Those are always the toughest. When you got to put it in a minute. What's the question again?
These youngsters, new generations are lost. It's not like you and me when you came to my house, the old days. It's different now. 16 years or whatever, I don't know how long it's been with your white Mercedes, if you remember. So these new generations are totally different. I need an advice from you. They can keep for the rest of their life. Something good to keep them holding on to Islam, to Allah, and move on.
It's tough because everybody's on a different wavelength, and everybody has a different experience. So to say one thing that would resonate with every individual is always tough to do. And you end up just, at the end of the day, you still end up generalizing. And I can just say for me, I kind of alluded to it earlier. I think it's innate in us as human beings to be attracted to pleasant things and to be repulsed by unpleasant things. Pay attention to those feelings, that you have. You know by and large as a human being, when you see stuff, what's wrong. What feels good, what doesn't feel good. If it doesn't feel good, there's a book out by Charles Duhigg called The Power of Habit. Why we do what we do in life and in business. It's a New York Times bestseller. Great piece of work. And how habits are formed. And how once they're formed, Allah speaks about this also either in the Quran or either in the Hadith or the Sira. How when you commit a sin, it leaves a stain. And even if you erase it, that stain is still there. It was the same with patterns. And just this book that Allah has given us, if you really believe in it, engage it. Don't just read it for the sake of reading, but really engage it, analyze it, think it through, and again, put it into knowledge is a room until it's lived in the muscles. Try it. It's like when Musa alayhi salam was on his journey with Khidr. And Khidr said to him, he finally found out that was him. He says, Musa said, let me follow you. He said, you will never be able to be patient with that which is beyond the scope of your experience. And he went through all of that journey, only to find out that what he went through with Khidr, when he reflected on his life, he went through the same thing. So just really engage it, analyze it, and follow it. It works.
Jazakumullah khairan. After the salah, we'll have Q&A, inshallah. Brothers and sisters, if you haven't gotten one of these, please take one of these, and please support our initiative and work. Jazakumullah khairan. Assalamu alaikum.